A new year has started. Well, actually it began over a month ago. For many of us it's the perfect time to make new plans and routines, or to basically start all over again. But do we really need a specific time for this? Is there ever a right time to start? As the old year came to a close, I prepared my garden for the winter. I cut back the rest of the bushes and prepared a little shelter for animals. The weeks turned into days, and 2026 was drawing even closer. I got this feeling of getting ready for a new and fresh start. To be honest, I kinda get this feeling over and over again as a new phase in my life is starting. On the other hand, I wonder why it's often limited to certain moments or situations. I mean, every moment can be the one to start, right? These new beginnings are associated with very high expectations and demands. Often we can only partially fulfill these, or hardly fulfill them at all, which leads to even greater disappointment and an even greater inhibition threshold for the next attempt. I failed a lot of times fulfilling these expectations, and it feels more and more frustrating to not be able to keep the promises I made towards myself. We humans are so good at making plans, but to go through with them is another chapter. Another thing I noticed within myself is that I found it more difficult to start or go through with plans whenever I tell other people about them. They form their own opinions and further expectations have to be met. I am not the only one affected by this phenomenon. I met so many people who struggle with that same issue. It's often phrased like the fear of starting. I know I picked up on the topic of procrastination in some of my videos. I also made a video about overthinking and the struggles that come with it. In my opinion, it often comes down to one main root: the fear of failure. Perfectionism falls into that same category. Since I can remember, I wanted to do a task in the most accurate and perfect way possible. As a kid, I remember spending hours in front of my homework, while my sister finished hers in about 20 minutes. I let myself get distracted with everything else, because how on earth could I ever meet these high expectations? So everything else became more interesting than the possible chance of failing. Most of the time, I finished my homework quickly before I had to go to bed, but lost so much time during the whole process of procrastination. It felt like getting done nothing at all and standing in my own way. These same behavior patterns can be transferred to starting something or starting over. It often feels like a clean cut, a new chance, or a blank page that can be fully new written. No past failure, no mistakes, just a fresh beginning. And what better occasion is there than the new year? But now, 1 month into the new year, I can say that it didn't work out the way I hoped. If not, my expectations were even more disappointed than before. I wanted to start doing sports more regularly. I wanted to integrate new routines and bring more structure into my life. I wanted to continue building my own business. Now it feels like I missed that one chance to start again. But did I really miss anything? Just because the new year can be a good chance for new beginnings, doesn't mean it has to be. There's always an opportunity to start over. No matter how old you are, what time of the year it is, or how many failed attempts you've been through. It's all in your own hands. It's never a fail as long as you don't give up on something. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Doing things at your own pace, it's much better than not doing them at all because of the fear of failure. What keeps you from starting right now? Only your own limiting thoughts. These last days I've tried to integrate specific periods of time into my daily routine that are devoted exclusively to one task. Often the time periods weren't even that long, 10 minutes or half an hour. It just felt like I needed to start somewhere and somehow. In some of my other videos I often mention that it helps to not focus so much on the outcome. And that's true, at least partially. If you only focus on the bigger picture, the smaller steps fade into the background. The task grows into this huge obstacle that is almost impossible to overcome. So, focusing on tiny steps can be a real game changer. On the other hand, you need direction. You need to take a look at the bigger picture to know which course you are heading for. Your current situation is the starting point. You gotta ask yourself, where am I right now and where do I want to be in a few months? I really needed some progress that leads me further towards my goals. I realized that now is the perfect time to start. One of the coping mechanisms of mine is distraction. When a task needs to be done, everything else suddenly becomes so much more interesting and important. Cleaning the house, washing the dishes, or sorting out things I don't need anymore suddenly become fun activities. So it's a good thing to eliminate distractions, to resist the temptation of avoiding the task at hand. Sometimes that feels like a real struggle with yourself. But if the only other option is boredom and being alone with your own thoughts, at some point this one task becomes much more appealing. It doesn't matter if you missed a deadline you set yourself. It's always the right time to start, but getting started is probably the hardest part. Everything that comes after will be a little bit easier because you've already laid the groundwork. The second obstacle is to stick through with your task or plan. When you are able to start, you enter a type of flow-like state. At first it feels so easy to keep going, but that high gradually wears off and you hit another low. Distraction suddenly becomes more and more appealing again, and that's exactly where it's important to push through, because starting all over again becomes more and more difficult each time. Comparison is another reason fresh starts do often feel so challenging. You do things in your own pace, based on your own development. Whenever you start comparing yourself to others, you're not reflecting your own progress or how to improve yourself. Instead, you're judging your own development against that of a completely different person with completely different circumstances. I often compare my YouTube channel to others. How many videos do they upload? What topics do they cover? How far ahead were they after a certain period of time? And to a certain extent this might make sense. After all, you learn from others. Yet it sometimes prevents me from taking my own steps at my own pace, because I see that others are often much more productive than I am. Another obstacle that prevents you from getting started is telling other people about your plans and goals. It may seem liberating at first, but it always carries the risk of you being judged and questioned. Like I said about comparison before, to some extent it might be useful, but most of the time it's rather counterproductive. Because if they question your ability to carry out that plan, you will too. So be careful to whom and when you're gonna open up. As I mentioned in my last video, the current situation in our world lays heavy on me. No matter where you look, so much horrible, destructive and evil things are happening at the same time. In comparison, My own plans and goals seem insignificant. That's another reason why I still feel stuck at the moment, and why new beginnings seem even more difficult. Many of these circumstances in our world are beyond our direct control, and focusing on all these horrible things can drain so much energy. However, we are able to change what's right in front of us. You gotta remind yourself, even if it may seem insignificant to the overall situation, it's still essential for your own development. These same patterns and thoughts can also be applied to the topic of age. As a social construct, it forces us into this restrictive cage, in which certain milestones must be reached at certain points in our lives. But what if we don't reach them? Are we then considered failures in the eyes of society? Definitely not. Of course, there are certain limitations, such as the time frame in which one can have a child, or the state of your health if you want to engage in high-performance sports. However, most of these milestones are not set in stone, and you can decide if and when you want to achieve them, like marriage or buying your own place to live. Maybe this video is a mere reminder for myself, something to come back to whenever I struggle again. Or maybe you feel the same way about getting started. If I'm able to help or inspire at least one person, it's all I could wish for this YouTube channel. Failure is certain if you don't even try. But once you start, there's always a chance you will achieve your desired outcome. As long as you keep trying, you did not fail. As long as you don't give up on your plans and goals, they are still possible to achieve. The right time is now. You will never be completely ready, but you will find your way during the process. The right moment starts as soon as you think about it. It may sound corny, but the right moment is always when you decide it is. You are the creator of your life, and not any occasion or situation. There's always the chance to start over. We don't need the new year to begin with sports or eating healthy. We are the creators of our own life and reality, and that's happening right now.